It's Artist Direct here on FM 100.5, and what a morning to have live music in studio with Lamajamal. Now, actually, we brought in 3 of the performers with Lamajamal who have come in for a performance, as well as other things that we'll find out about here at the Center for Faith and Life at Luther College. That performance is happening on Saturday evening at 7:30. And so I'm going to go through and maybe, I've got your names here, but maybe what I'll have you do is introduce yourselves and please tell me what instrument or instruments, Eve, you play in the group. So why don't we start over here?
All right. My name is George Lawler, and I'm a drummer. I play Middle Eastern percussion, so I'll be playing a Middle Eastern tambourine called a rik and a goblet drum, which is known as a darbuka. And I also have an entire kit of various Middle Eastern drums that I set up around myself, which isn't a traditional way to do it, but I like to do it that way because it's a lot more fun for me.
Well, if you're a drummer and you're used to your kit, you can kind of make it happen the way you want to. I have to imagine as a percussionist, it's got to be pretty cool to sort of branch out from what we grow up with here in North America traditionally, and go into some of these other percussive instruments.
Yeah, I learned all this in Chicago from a master percussionist who I met delivering pizzas at a restaurant, and he was conservatory trained in a Tunisian music conservatory, so he had the full...
Used to be pizza delivery, now it's Uber. So if you're going to learn things, those are really your 2 best options. That's really cool. Learning from people is really kind of the best and most ancient way of really learning music.
Right, yeah. We used to meet at his house around midnight and play till about 4 in the morning for about maybe 8 years.
There's got to be a few good stories there. All right, so that's our friend George Lawler. Now, Ronnie Malley, also from Chicago?
Yes, originally from Chicago.
And what is this thing?
This is an instrument called al-oud, which means in Arabic wood. But
makes sense.
Basically, it's a lute. We would call it a lute in English, and in fact, the word lute comes from al-oud.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, and it's basically like the great-grandfather of the guitar.
Yeah.
Many centuries ago, about 1,200 years ago, there was a gentleman by the name of Ziryab who took it to Spain and eventually became the European lute and then led to the guitar.
Okay, this is a strange question then. This is just a personal query. At what point in the history of the lute versus moving on to the guitar did they decide that the head, which is the part for those that are up at the top of the neck, because the one you're holding it curves back as if it could sit on your shoulder? Yeah.
Kind of.
So at what point in when did history make it upright?
That's a good question. Actually, even older guitars, and even if you see some violins today, it's mainly because of the pegs, the way that the tension holds the string in place. Probably with the advent of the mechanical tuners. So you have gears that actually will hold the string in place as well.
I'm very grateful to those.
Yeah, exactly. For the most part, though, it's usually got a bent neck. I remember George and I were touring once in the Netherlands and walking into a bar, and a guy's like, "Hey, man, do you know your guitar is broken?" I was like, "Yep, I knew that."
It's when you know those guys are geniuses. Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
He was totally genius.
Well, tell me the name one more time.
al-oud.
Al-oud. That's not right, but that was close. Yeah.
Very good.
All right, now Eve. I heard you like to just really show off with all the instruments. So how many instruments do you play first?
I think I'm up to about 6 or 7 now.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's all I do. I
That's
don't have
impressive.
hobbies. I don't have a job. I don't have kids. I just play instruments.
Except for teaching all those
Yeah.
instruments.
Well, yeah.
And teaching them all, right.
Yeah.
So Eve Munzingo, who has been in here, the first song you're on the clarinet, and what else do you play in the show?
Well, I have a saxophone and a flute, and I have different clarinets because you need different clarinets for different songs, different tools for the different jobs, And all of those instruments are related. They're very similar. So you can, if you learn one and you have the drive or the motivation, you can move on to the other ones, and that they're very helpful for different styles of music in different countries. And then I have a big hammered dulcimer, which I learned to play that back in the early 90s. My clarinet teacher wanted somebody to play accompaniment, so first I learned the piano so I could accompany him, and then his mom found a hammered dulcimer in what do you call it, an art an art show, art craft showing.
Yeah.
And she bought it for him, and he retuned it, and then he said, no more piano, you're going to play this. So I learned that because that was what you do what your teacher tells you to do.
You guys had some very bossy teachers. The one that says you have to come over at midnight, bring a pizza with you. I'll teach you some things. And then this one says, this is your new instrument.
Yep.
I like it. That's actually maybe a good way to go. Lamajamal, first of all, what was the mission of this group coming together? Because very clearly, different backgrounds, different teachers, different instruments. What made you decide that this should be a musical group?
Back in 2004, that same teacher that George is talking about actually used to perform with my dad. My dad's a musician.
Kidding.
And I've known him since I was 10 years old. And he indeed was actually kind of like the catalyst for me to start playing Middle Eastern music.
Cool.
He saw me walking around with my guitar one day. I play guitar originally. And he's like, come here, you think you play music? Come here, play this. And he hummed something to me. And I thought, that's interesting. What do you want? I was learning Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine.
Of course you were.
And he wants me to play this thing. He said, play this. So eventually I figured it out. And then he turns to my dad and he says, no, they must play Arabic music. And I thought,
Is that a family background? Okay.
It's a family background. My family's from Palestine. My family's from Jerusalem and Ramallah. And so my father plays, but I was involved in, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Iron Maiden.
GNR.
And Metallica. So he came back to me the next week and he's like, put on something nice and bring your guitar. And I thought, okay, I don't know where we're going here. So he took us and literally threw me and my brother, who's a percussionist, on stage to play at a wedding with him. I knew 3 chords, but I kept it going. And I thought, whatever, I'm having fun. And that was the perfect thing to get over stage fright, to get over anything.
Wow.
He had a way of doing that.
Yeah, he was very much like that. And from then on, actually, it was like we played all the time. And eventually, he came back to Chicago, and he had a little store, our friend. His name is Najib. And that's where I met George. And we were just experimenting, doing a lot of different things. And we have our bass player who's actually coming in tonight from Chicago as well, Joey.
Oh, that's great.
And the 3 of us kind of got together and said, hey, let's do something. And so we started to select some songs, play some original stuff, some stuff that was prior, some original stuff, and some stuff that was written already. And we were in George's place, and we always had the Random House Dictionary open. It was just a bunch of nerds hanging out. And we were like, well, what can we call this band? What do we call the name of it? And Joey had recommended, he said, why do we call it Camel? I said, no, we're not going to call it Camel. But I said, but you gave me an idea, because the way you say camel in Arabic is Jamal. But if you say Jamal, like the name Jamal, that actually means beauty.
Which is lovely.
And the dictionary happened to be open to the word palindrome. I said, hey, let's turn it into a palindrome. And it came out Lamajamal. So we thought, hey, that's like beauty inside out. And so that was the birth of the band in 2004.
I love that, and it's interesting when you can get musicians to come together from various backgrounds, family backgrounds, world life backgrounds, different instruments, and yet you come together to play such beautiful music that has a tradition and a history all its own. That's got to feel pretty special. That's got to feel pretty motivating to get up each day and do something kind of cool.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Shortly after we formed the band as a trio, we met Eve and another guitarist named Gary, and they brought in a bunch of Balkan music, so we had a whole nother repertoire.
Well, I was going to ask in the last song, it was like reflections of klezmer, sort of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that some of what your background was?
Definitely. I grew up playing bar mitzvahs, and yeah. I started at about 15 or 16, and then by the time I was 18, I was playing a lot of bar mitzvahs and stuff.
So you
like
guys
that.
were getting thrown into weddings and bar mitzvahs.
Yeah.
So really, the trajectory is, if you want to be a musician, get thrown into some sort of
Sink
group.
or swim.
Yep.
Trial by
Find
fire.
a teacher
That's trial
that's
by
really
fire.
tough and throws you
That's
right
what
in
music
the
is. It's a language.
It is a language. We're here speaking with Lamajamal, and they will be on stage at the Center for Faith and Life at Luther College as part of the Center Stage series on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. And you can still, of course, get your tickets online at tickets.luther.edu. I know Paul Atkins was very excited excited at Luther to have you guys come in. He was bragging up the things that he thought were pretty cool this year. And one of the difficult things is for those that have never heard the music that we're talking about today, it's hard to understand what it's going to feel like. So I'm so glad you played that first song, because I think it gives a sense of the kind of fun, the levity, the way it makes you feel. I mean, there is a life to that music.
For sure.
Yeah, and I have to say, as a percussionist, you there's got to be some fun places that I know you got to bring.
Definitely.
But even your tambourine looks cooler than any tambourine. I know that's not what it's called, but
Yeah, the tambourine or the rick is one of my favorite instruments because it's kind of like holding a drum set in your hands. You could bring it anywhere, but it has all these different sounds.
So give us a couple, what can you give me a sound example of different things you can do?
So like you can play like a rock beat on it if you want.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Of course, there's a lot of different styles, and it's mainly one of the main instruments for Middle Eastern classical music. So there's another style for that.
Well, and I think to be able to know, are they called cymbals?
Yeah,
Is
zills
something?
or cymbals.
Okay.
Yeah.
To be able to even know how to work those, I mean, those of us that have ever tried just to keep time with a tambourine and we're not actually trained on it, it's not as easy.
Yeah,
as
I was pretty much blown away when I saw Najib play this at first. I was like, ooh, I want to do that.
Yeah, it's a little bit cooler. As far as putting this show together, did you guys have an opportunity to create music of your own? Is it some original work? Is it all traditional tunes?
It's a little bit of both. I'll speak to what my contribution was. Basically, George and I both produce music. We both record. We have recording studios, and
Cool.
that was kind of what brought us together first. And we thought, well, let's pick some old folk tunes, but let's also start writing some of our own stuff. So I brought some original songs. I know Gary wrote some original songs, and we've ended up producing about 3-4 albums.
Wow.
With Lamajamal. Eve joined us
2004.
2004, and she brought in
like
a substantial repertoire. Where is it?
I was working on a lot of Greek music and klezmer music,
Yeah.
and my friend Gary was. We were playing guitar and clarinet together. We both taught at a music studio, so whenever our students didn't show up, we'd get together and practice.
Which is
often, yes. And he would always try to reharmonize all the songs so they sounded really modern. And we just tried to get a little into this century, get out of the old world and into the new, a little bit of both. So that was a lot of fun. And we brought that to these guys, and they were like, well, wait, I can do this plug-in, and I can do this, I don't even know the studio lingo, but they made it sound really cool with a lot of reverb and all that.
That's what's important,
Yeah,
right?
reverb.
Making
Yeah.
it sound really cool. And when you get together on stage, is there an element of improv to this? Is it all very structured? Because different types of music, of course, require different things.
Yeah, and indeed, there's a lot of improvisation. That's what I think what brought us together with playing these styles of music. A lot of people feel that music is mutually exclusive when it's very cumulative.
Yeah.
It's in Indian music and North Indian music, especially from Rajasthan, influenced a lot of the Eastern European music that's played by the Roma. Influenced a lot of music that's played in Spain, even in North Africa, and vice versa. And so it's like I grew up with a Middle Eastern North African tradition, but then like Eve brings in a klezmer tradition or Greek tradition. It's like, wait a minute, some of this is very similar. The scales are the same. Some of the melodies follow. Heck, some of the songs are identical.
Yeah.
Actually, in fact, they borrow from each other in the regions.
I absolutely believe that. Well, imagine, I mean, if you go way back to trading times, to more adventurous times when people didn't know what was beyond, the things they took with them were stories and music, and a
Right.
lot of times those came together. The singing of songs or the telling of stories were the structure by which a lot of communities came together and formed new communities.
Exactly.
And so it absolutely makes sense that there would be
Yeah.
a tie into those.
The one song that we play with the sax and the oud, it's a Macedonian Roma song that we kind of called a medley called Nazdrave medley, which is a Bulgarian way of saying
I was going to say that
Cheers.
cheers.
Nizdravia.
Zdravia.
And
Yeah.
Russian as well, right?
I know toast in almost every language, so I have that. I'm from Wisconsin. We know them
You
all.
need to know that. Yes.
Yeah, that's important Wisconsin upbringing. That's
We love to say nice driveway, and our Bulgarian friends think it's hilarious.
Yeah. Nice
So,
driveway.
Yes.
If you can't say Nazdrave,
It-
but
it's all right. They love it when you butcher their language.
that medley is actually an example of how music is mixed, because that piece is from Macedonia, but it's originally a Roma piece. And
Yeah.
again, we look back to the Roma for really helping spread a lot of this music.
Well, I think that's what's been so exciting having you guys here. And I know we need to get to another song and let you go on with your day. But part of what you've been doing here is also visiting with students. I believe yesterday you were at the middle school, true, here in Decorah?
Yes,
Correct,
Yes,
yes.
that was really nice.
How was that for the kids?
Oh, it was
they loved
awesome.
it.
They were
It
really
was
good
great.
kids, and they were smart. You know,
Good
they
questions.
knew where the countries were, or at least what continent. They knew Egypt was in Africa, which a lot of times kids don't even know there are other countries. So we were
got
very
smart
impressed.
kids in the area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think it's so important to be able to bring the music to the students as well. And I know not every student can get to the CFL, and of course the CFL makes it really possible for as many people to go as are able. But to be able to do it in the schools is such a wonderful
Yeah.
experience, I think.
Yeah, and
We
we
love
had a high school class as well, where we taught theory, and we were a little more complicated, a little more the scales of that we're dealing with. And
That's cool. They need to
Yeah.
hear that too. Well, Lamajamal, it sounds like you've touched a lot of people in the community here, and you will touch a whole lot more on Saturday
Hopefully.
when you perform 7:30 at the Center for Faith and Life at Luther College. Of course, I personally encourage you all to go out and see these nice people. They're going to make some great music for you, and you can get those tickets online at tickets.luther.edu. We do want to wrap up with another song. Can you tell me what we're going to hear? Because I saw you're getting out the saxophone, Eve.
We'll do the Nazdravim medley.
Is that the one we were just
Yeah.
so
The
should I toast
Macedonian
while we're
song.
doing this?
Yes,
Yes,
Why don't we
exactly.
say it
Definitely.
together?
Hoppa!
Nazdravim!
Nice driveway. It's Artist Direct here on FM 100.5. I want to thank Eve, Ronnie, and George, Lamajamal, and the rest of your crew that are coming in tonight. Thank you for joining us, and have a great show.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you,
for
Jenny.
having us.
Thank you for having
Bye-bye.
us.
Thanks again to Singing Hammers Construction for always making it possible for us to do this on air every single week.